من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah, we continue with the dars of fiqh. From the last time we had a session of fiqh, and we talked about some of the rulings, or the 5 rulings of ahkam, in which anything that we do, it has to be under one of these 5 rulings, whether it's wajib, and the opposite of that is muharram, or is haram, and the mustahab, which is recommended, and the opposite of that is the makruh, and then the mubah. And we talked about that. And also, the first chapters of matters of fiqh is usually the salah, because this is the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the second pillar of Islam, and the most important deed in our life after the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because of that, the books of fiqh, it starts with the rulings of the salah. And before the salah, there is the conditions for the salah to be met, like the tahara, matters of purification, physical purification of oneself, and the subject of the tahara, or how do we make tahara with, which is basically the water and the characteristics of it, and all the details needed. And we talked about the miraculous nature of the rulings in the religion of Islam. Everything in the Deen of Islam is miraculous. One of which even the rulings of how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things that no matter what environment you live in, whether it's at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or now, or in the city, or in a village, or in the desert, or anywhere, you can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very easy way. You don't need any form of sophistications to be able to worship Allah. And if you live in some complex setup, you can still worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Simple setup, you can still worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what the meaning of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, نحن أمة أمية لا نكتب ونحسب الشهر هكذا وهكذا. We are illiterate ummah. It's not a negative thing. It doesn't mean that we're not encouraged to write and read. Of course, we are encouraged to do that. But what is meant here, that this ummah, when it comes to the matters of worship, you don't need to be advanced to be able to worship Allah, because it's supposed to be a universal message for everyone. So everyone can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very easy way. And that's why the rulings in fiqh, you can clearly see that in matters of tahara and salah and so on. And we stopped, Allahu a'lam, at the chapter from book منهاج السالكين, in the fasl إزالة النجاسة والأشياء النجسة. How to, or what to remove of najasa or impurities, and what are the impurities, what are the najasat. And the importance of that is, for us to be able to stand in the salah, we have to be pure in 2 states. In state of wudu, right, and this is, they call it الطهارة حكمية. It's a purification by the rulings of it. It's not something that you would physically be pure when you make wudu, because you only wash certain parts of your body, and the wudu is just a matter of worship. It is not just about being clean. If a person clean himself in his own way, and he comes and he thinks that he can make a salah, this is not acceptable unless he would make the wudu in the prescribed way. So that's why it's a purity that comes under these rulings. So the person has to be in state of wudu, state of tahara, and min al-hadath, meaning from the things that breaks the wudu, and tahara min al-khabath. And you have to be pure from impurities. You have to be clean from impurities in your body, in your clothes, in the spot that you will pray on. So these 3 places has to be clean from impurities. So removing impurities, it is meant to be so that you'll be able to make salah. And what are the impurities? So he said here in the book, وَيَكْفِي في غسل جميع النجاسات على البدن أو الثوب أو البقعة أو غيرها أن تزول عينها عن المحل أو عن المحل, which means that it is enough when you wash all the means of najasat, and you talk about what are the najasat, what are the impurity things from the badan, from the body, from the thawb or your clothes, and from the buq'a, the spot that you pray on, or any place that you just remove the impurity itself from the place. So you don't have to have a ritual way of removing the najasa. Your responsibility is to remove the najasa. Acts of worship, you have to do it in a certain way. But removing the najasa, there is no rituals to it. You just remove it. And that's why there is no specific numbers of how to remove the najasa by certain numbers of washing or whatever, except in one najasa, and that is najasat al-kalb. Najasat al-kalb, the najasa of the dog, of the saliva of the dog. And the Prophet ﷺ, in the clear hadith, that he mentioned that if the dog, إِذَا وَلَغَ الْكَلْبُ فِي إِنَاءِ أَحَدِكُمْ, if the dog licks one of your plates, the Prophet ﷺ said, فَصِرُونَ سَبْعًا أُولَهُنَّ بِالتُّرَابِ, wash it 7 times, the first time with dust. So this is the only type of najasa that we are ordered to wash it in that particular way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best the wisdom behind it, and some people, they even find out that physically there is some form of virus or something in the saliva of the dog that it won't be removed unless it's washed in that same particular way. But whether this is true or not, it doesn't matter to us. This is the order of the Prophet ﷺ, and we follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ exactly the same way that he ordered us. So anything else, any impurity, we just remove it. Remove it with water, yes, and the majority of the ulama, they insisted that it has to be water that is the thing that removes the najasa. But what if the najasa is removed and there's nothing whatsoever? If you analyze it in the lab, you would never find any even small amount of the najasa, and you removed it by some chemicals. 7 times if it's the najasa from the saliva of the dog. So if anything else, right, and we'll talk about what are the najasat, and there was a najasa on the carpet, for example, that you make salah on, and you didn't have water, or you removed it by any other chemical, right, and the najasa was removed, does it make it invalid, and is the place still impure? The answer is no. Why? Because the place is not pure. And if you look at it with the microscope, there's no najasa on it, because it's already cleaned. And that's why it's a very important point, that it's not about how to remove the najasa, it's about removing it. So once it's removed, that's what you're supposed to do, except the najasa of the dog. Now, what are the things that are considered to be najas or impure? The word najasa comes from the word something that is not clean, something that is dirty. And this is something that people can call many things that they would consider not clean, but this is not necessarily what najasa means, because this is a matter of deen. So it has to have an evidence. Anything that is called najas or impure, that means you can't pray if it's on your body or your clothes or the spot that you pray on. It has to have an evidence from the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Otherwise, everything is pure. Everything is pure unless proven otherwise. Even if it doesn't smell good, even if it doesn't look good, it doesn't matter. The purity and impurity, religious-wise, yes, you would stay away from what you don't like. But when it comes to these rulings, it has to be according to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So he mentioned these najasat. He said the first one is bawlul adami, the urine of the human being. Right? And this is, of course, these are consensus among the people of knowledge. So this is an impure thing. Wa which means the urine and the feces. Basically, all of this is impure. Wa-dam. The third one is blood, and the blood has differences of opinions. But then he says, إِلَّا أَنَّهُ يُعْفَى عَنِ الدَّمِ الْيَسِيرِ. The small amount of blood, it is forgivable. It's not something that a person has to worry about. وَمِثْلُهُ الدَّمُ الْمَسْفُوحُ مِنَ الْحَيْوَانِ الْمَأْكُولِ دُونَ الَّذِي يَبْقَى فِي اللَّحْمِ وَالْعُرُوقِ فَإِنَّهُ طَاهِرٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, الدَّمْ الْمَسْفُوح. The dam, or the blood that comes out gushing when the animal is slaughtered. this blood is impure. If it comes on the person that is slaughtering, then he has to wash his clothes. But the blood that stays in the meat, then it's pure. That's nothing wrong with it because it stays there. It's only the blood that comes out when the animal is slaughtered and it comes out with quantities. This is what is impure. The dam or the blood of the human beings, this is where he mentioned here that this is najis. And the majority of ulama, they take this opinion, but when we look into the other opinion, we would find that it's more cited by strong evidences. Why? Because what's mentioned in the ayah is the dam al-masfuh, is the dam that comes out gushing from the animal. But the dam or the blood of the human being, there's no clear evidence that it's impure. And there's even some evidences where it proves that it's pure. And the ulama mentioned some of them. For example, the statement of Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, when he said, لا يزال المسلمون يصلون في جراحته, that the Muslimin, referring to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they would continuously always pray in their wounds. And there's no clear evidence. Something like this has to be clearly stated and widespread and so on. They would go in battles and so on, and they would be wounded and they would pray. And there's nothing that the Prophet ﷺ told them to go renew their wudu or anything like that because they were wounded. And something important like this would never be mentioned lightly. Something that has to be widespread. And there's no evidence of this. Also the famous hadith of Abbad ibn Bishr radiallahu anhu and Ammar ibn Yasir, when they were guarding the Muslims, after they were coming back from a battle, and one of the disbelievers followed them, and they were guarding the Muslims during the night. And Abbad ibn Bishr stood up to make salah at night while his turn to guard, and Ammar ibn Yasir slept. So the disbeliever, he shot an arrow on Abbad ibn Bishr and he started bleeding. And he continued his salah. And he shot another one, and the third one, he started bleeding more, and he finished his salah, and then he woke up Ammar ibn Yasir and he told him, how come you didn't wake me up earlier? He said, I was reciting a surah, I didn't want to finish it. And the hadith is always mentioned of what level of khushu' these people had. That he is in salah, and he is in khushu', and he didn't want to finish the salah when someone is shooting an arrow on him, and he's bleeding. But the point from the fiqh point of view, that he continued the salah. He didn't say, I am bleeding, that breaks my wudu. And if somebody would say, but maybe the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ was not present with him. But to answer this, the Prophet ﷺ would have said something to them, or wahi would come down to correct this issue if it was wrong. So since was this something mentioned and it's approved without having anything to refute it, that means it's okay to pray when you have wounds or there's blood and so on. If a person is bleeding, a whole bunch, of course a person will not be standing on the side, would try to save his life. But this is with the issue of the blood. And also he says, وَمِنَ النَّجَسَاتِ بَوْلُ وَرَوَثْ كُلُّ حَيْوَانٍ مُحَرَّمٍ الْأَكْلُ. The urine and the feces of any animal that is haram to eat. Any animal that is haram for us to eat, its urine or feces becomes impure if it comes on one's body or one's clothes or the place that the person is praying on. Clear? Anything that is what that means, understanding from this that any animal that is halal for us to eat, its urine is pure and its feces is pure. It doesn't mean it's pure that we go carry it and decor our houses with it, for example. Nobody would ever say that. You would, feel, you don't want to touch it, you're away from it. But if it happened that a piece of it or small piece of it in your clothes or something like that, it does not invalidate the salah. Right? وَالسِّبَاعُ كُلُّهَا نَجِسَةٌ. What's السِّبَاع in English?
Wild animals?
Wild animals, those who hunt and eat, and they're all impure. Right? The ones that would hunt animals and eat, they're all impure.
Predators.
Right, predators.
Yeah, predators now. وكذلك الميتات. anything that died without being slaughtered. إِلَّا مَيْتَةُ الْآدَمِي, except the human being when they die. The human being is pure. Even the disbelievers. Everybody is pure physically. إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ, the ayah that the mushrikun are najas, this is not a physical impurity, this is an inward impurity because of their disbelief. But there's no such a thing that is if a Muslim shakes his hand with a disbeliever, he has to renew his wudu. There's no such a thing. He's physically pure if he's pure. But anything that died without being slaughtered, animals that died without being slaughtered, becomes impure. يقول وَمَا لَا نَفْسَ لَهُ سَائِلًا, which means there is no blood to it. وَالسَّمَكْ وَالْجَرَادْ لِأَنَّهَا طَاهِرَةٌ. The thing that doesn't have blood, it's pure, like the fish and the locusts and all these types of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now we mentioned the evidences, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ إِلَى آخِرِهِ, which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid for you al-mayta, the animals that dies without being slaughtered, and the blood and so on. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن لا ينجس حيا ولا ميتا. The believers are never impure whether they are alive or dead. And some people think when they wash a body after it dies, that they have to make wudu because it's impure. It's very stressed that they make wudu, not because of the body is impure, but because this is what the Prophet ﷺ ordered. And it's recommended to take a shower, but there's no evidence that this is mandatory. Not because the body of the dead is impure. وقال أحل لنا ميتتان ودمان فأما الميتتان فالحوت والجراد وأما الدمان فالكبد والطحال. That the Prophet ﷺ said two types of dead things and two bloods are permissible for us. The two dead things are al-hut, which is fish, wal-jarad, locusts. وأما الدمان, the two bloods are liver and spleen. These are permissible for us. The liver is all blood, and you eat it, right? And there's the liver, of course, of the animals that are permissible for us to eat, in which it's blood, but we still eat it. وأما أرواث الحيوانات المأكولة وأبوالها فهي طاهرة. We mentioned that the urine or the feces of the animals that we eat, it's pure, it's not najis. ومني الآدمي طاهر. And the mani, the seminal fluid of the human being, is tahir and it's not impure. It's not impure. This is what the human being is made of. And the Prophet ﷺ كان يغسل رطبه ويفرك يابسه. The Prophet ﷺ used to wash it when it's wet and scratch it when it's dry. That means it's not impure, it's something that is pure. But of course, to clean it, this is something else. But as far as the impurity that will prevent the person from making salah, the mani is pure. And then he talks about the bawl walam al-saghir, the urine of the young that did not get to eat the real food yet, only breastfed. This is permissible, where the urine is not quite pure and it's not impure. It's something in the middle. And the Prophet ﷺ said, يُغْسَلُ مِنْ بَوْلِ الْجَارِيَةِ وَيُرَشُّ مِنْ بَوْلِ الْغُلَامِ. If it's a girl, if it's a young girl and she didn't eat food yet, and she's only depending on the milk or from her mother, is to wash her, if she urinates on one's clothing, is to wash the clothing, to be dealt with as impure. But the urine of the boy is to sprinkle water. That's what that means. The najasa is mukhaffafa. Impurity is somehow light. There is some form of impurity, but it's lighter than the urine of the grown-ups and the urine of the young girl if she was born and did not eat food yet. And there has to be something physical differences between the two types of urine. And that's why the ruling is different. Not just that the boy is different and the girl just being a boy or girl. And some even mention that in some research papers, even bacteria is a big difference between both. Something to the ratio of 1 to 442 or something like that, between the urine of the boy and the urine of the girl. Then he says, وَإِذَا زَالَتْ عَيْنٌ وإذا زالت عين النجاسة طهر المحل, that if the impurity itself is cleaned, then it is clean, the place is clean, the place is pure. وَلَمْ يَضُرَّ بَقَاءُ اللَّوْنِ وَالرِّيحِ, and it won't harm if there's still color present or the smell, if you can't avoid it. If it's been cleaned so much and the smell is still there, it does not harm, right? But especially the color. The color, if it stains, then it's okay. Whether it's blood or something like that, as long as the person cleaned the najasa itself, there's no najasa there, it's only the color and so on, it will not harm the place or the clothes or whatever. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said when it comes to the blood of the menses, which is impure. يَكْفِيكِ الْمَاء وَلَا يَضُرُّكِ أَثَرًا. He told her that water is enough for you and it does not harm you, the effect of it, that meaning the color of the blood if it stains. This is basically the different types of najasat that he mentioned. Right? So this is the najasat and how to clean it. Any questions? No.
Can you clarify or define what does it mean by wash? Does it have to be just with water, with soap or anything? And the other thing is, when you say for the urine of the boy who hasn't started eating the food, you sprinkle, how do you do it? You just take, like, you wet your hand and then...
When we say غسل النجاسة or washing the najasa, that means the water has to run on the place. This is what washing means, not wiping, but the water has to run on it. It doesn't have to that every single small details of it, the water runs on it. But as long as the water runs on it, and then maybe with one's hand, if there's not enough water, that a person can use his hand to gather the water all over the place, that's considered still washing. But it's usually when the water runs on the spot. The same thing when you wash the face, for example, or you wash your legs, it's different than wiping. So washing is the water will run, but in wudu you can use your hand to rub the rest of the organ, and that will be considered that you washed your arm or washed your face. But when it comes to sprinkling the water with regards to the urine of the boy that didn't eat food yet, is to make the water covers the area, but without necessarily the water running on it. So when you sprinkle water, right, so that it will cover the area. You will find the whole area wet, but it's not damp, it's not running on it. You don't pour water on it. So there's a difference between pouring and between sprinkling, but it doesn't mean that when it's sprinkled, you would leave it just one time like this and that's it. When you would sprinkle it with water, that means it will be covered with water but not being damped, not being poured on it.
You squeeze or no? Just sprinkle it?
Of course, at times of ease, you would just wash it, of course. But it's in a case where you don't have much water or you need to make salah and so on, you can you just keep on sprinkling water on it till it's covered with water.
Sheikh, najasa, does it cancel your wudu?
No, this is a good question. And the najasa, if a person has najasa on one's body or one's clothes or the place that you pray on, it does not invalidate the wudu. The wudu is something else. It does not break the wudu, but it breaks the salah. You cannot pray when you have these things on. But if you forget that you have it on, your salah is valid.
So just like wash your hand if it came in your hand and you continue.
Right. For example, you are in wudu and something happened and a dog licked your pants, for example, right? So what do? That does not break the wudu. But you need to wash that area that he licked. You have to wash it. And it doesn't, do you wash the pants 7 times the first time it does? No, it's only the plate. The najasa of the kalb, of the dog to be washed, if it's only the plate 7 times, the first time it does. Anything else, you just wash it with water. Plate. The plate that you eat from. Other than that, you just wash it with water, that's it. So, so this is not really the rule. But the ruling also that if you are during a salah and you remember that you have some najasa on a jacket, for example, then if you can take the jacket off and you throw it aside, and you complete your salah, that your salah is valid.
Even inside your salah.
Even inside your salah. And whatever the part of the salah that you prayed while you had it on, it's not harmful. Because the Prophet ﷺ did that when he was praying, and during the salah he took his shoes off. So the Sahaba of the Rahman, they saw that, so they took the shoes off too, imitating the Prophet ﷺ without asking maybe this or that. No, they just imitate the Prophet ﷺ. So after the Prophet ﷺ finished, he asked them, why did you take your shoes off? They told him, we saw you doing this, so we did the same thing. The Prophet ﷺ said, Jibreel came and told me that it has najasa in it. So the Prophet ﷺ did repeat the salah. So if you remember during the salah, then you remove it and there is no harm. And this is an evidence that if you finish the salah and you discover that you had najasa, or you forgot, you already know that you forgot before the salah, and you finish the salah when you had the najasa and you forgot, your salah is valid and you don't have to repeat it. Which is totally different than if you remember that you did make wudu. Then you have to repeat the salah. Because you cannot make salah without wudu.
If you are praying in a room which has najasa, can you just clean the spot when you're praying, or you have to clean it?
Right. The buqa means the same spot that you make salah on, when standing and ruku' and sujood. That's it. Other than that, it doesn't matter if it's clean or not, as long as the place that you are praying on is clean. But this also brings an important point. How to, we got to know the different najasat, right? But how would you, can doubt be a part of judging whether this is najas or not? No. These things has to have yaqeen. You have to have certainty. And the certainty, you are in the level where you can swear by Allah that there's najas. If you're not in this level, then you don't build an action on just doubt. That's why when people in their workplace, for example, and they say, how can I pray on this carpet? When people walking with their shoes on it and they go to the bathroom, do you see najasa on the ground? You smell it, you see it. If you don't see it like this, if there's no, that's why the word ayn al-najasa is always mentioned. Ayn al-najasa meaning the physical najasa, the physical part of the najasa, this is what's removed. Not what you feel or what you think, or maybe this or maybe that. And that's why the deen is easy. These matters are easy. You see people making it difficult for themselves for matters of the najasa. This is against the way the Prophet ﷺ. This deen teaches us to be clean, to be pure, and so on. But not to get into the extreme in which a person, sometimes people would stay in the bathroom making wudu the whole day because of the waswas that would come to them, and they keep on, hesitating of doing things and so on. If you can't see it, then it's pure, unless proven otherwise.
About the fish, is it all type of whatever inside the sea? Is it?
Yes, all type, anything that lives in the sea. Because the Prophet said, Al-Hut is anything that is in the sea. But some ulama, like Imam Hanifa, for example, rahimahullah, he gave the ruling that if there is something that lives in the sea and the land, then it's different. But the majority, the jumhur of the ulama, the opinion that if it lives in the sea, that's it. Even if it lives also on the land. That means it's pure.
Especially living in this land, how do you purify, for example, carpets, or if you have a big couch, that's the sun. How do you go about cleaning this?
How to clean the carpets or the couch from impurities, a child, for example, urinating on these places, with whatever means of cleaning. And water should be used, and you can use with water anything else, like soap or something that has a good smell. But to be on the safe side, definitely you use water at all times. But if you use something else and it removes the najasa, that's fine. You see what I'm saying? So anything that removes it, that will be sufficient. But if you use water, that's better.
Some kind of stainer or something like that.
If the stain stays there, it does not harm the place.
One time, a child came in the masjid in Page actually, and he urinated in the carpet like this. So how do we clean exactly like this carpet?
Right. You pour water with soap, and you pour it so that it's make the place soak. You soak the place, right? And that's it. And the Prophet ﷺ, on the Bedouin urinated in the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered for a bucket of water to be poured on it. But the bucket of water, and this is where the fiqh and understanding of the matter, the Prophet's masjid was made of sand or dust, right? So the bucket of water will be sufficient, and you don't have to mop or to do anything. But imagine the floor is hard floor, and there is standing urine on the hard floor. You pour some water on it, it might not clean it, it might just spread it. So it's not about the action itself, it's about removing the najasa. So the understanding of it is that you remove the najasa with whatever means. So anything that would take care of that, that will be sufficient. There's a very amazing hadith that is very good for us to know, that the angels, ملائكة تدخل بيتا, and the hadith is authentic, الله أعلم, فيه بول منتقع. The angels do not enter a house that has urine in it. Muntaqa means soaked, or when there's children and they urinate and maybe they don't clean very well after them and there's urine, there's maybe a smell, the angels won't enter these types of places. So that means it's something that has to be cleaned. People should clean these things. But sometimes it's clean, then there is some still, the athar or it stains, it's okay, there's no harm.
Sheikh, in book Bulugh al-Maram, Ibn Hajar, when I was going through before, and you just mentioned, like, why do we have to use soap if, how much I know, if it's a hadith authentic, that Prophet says, like, the water cleans everything.
Right.
So we don't have to use.
We don't have to.
Because the water will clean everything.
Right. The water will clean everything. But in the case a person wants to use soap to make it smell nice, it's not something that is makruh or haram to use soap. You can use soap. Same thing when you wash your clothes, for example, in the washer or something. So if it cleans more, it cleans better, definitely no problem.
But it's authentic hadith, Sahih, about water. The water will clean everything.
Yes, it's an authentic hadith. And that means that the water is pure, nothing would make it impure. Unless the water changed, by the smell or the taste or the color. But the water, of course, is pure. And that's why with the najasat that we mentioned, water will clean it. If it's only water present, it will be enough to clean it. And that's also the simplicity of the Deen. You won't find a case where there's impurity. You have to have some form of anything other than water to clean it. No, it's all easy. And that's why, for example, when a person goes to the bathroom, he doesn't have to clean himself with soap. Water is enough.
Also about taking showers, from what I understand, some saying, like, to be on safe side, it's better to first take shower with only water, so that the water gets on you. Because if you use the soap, is this authentic?
No, the person should not make a difference for
It's not
himself.
important.
Taking a shower, while taking a shower, the person uses soap or anything else, it's okay. Doesn't have to take the shower only with water and then go through the rituals of shampooing and soap and things. No, that is easy.
شيخنا جزاكم خير. مقولة الأصل في الأمور الحل.
No.
هذه يعني صحيح.
In many things, yes. The principle is that the original status of everything is halal unless proven otherwise. This is in matters of mu'amalat and halal and haram. Transactions and halal and haram, everything is halal unless proven otherwise. Not that everything is haram. So you have to have, if somebody says, what's the evidence that this is halal? You say, what's the evidence that this is haram? Not that you ask me what's the evidence of everything is halal unless proven otherwise. Same thing with transactions. Type of buying or selling or something like that. A person doesn't have to come up with the evidence that it's permissible. No, the evidence that it's not permissible has to be presented if somebody have an evidence. When it comes to matters of ibadah, the opposite. Everything is haram. You cannot worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
In your room.
in your own way. It becomes haram. Unless you follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Start with this point. So, tonight is continue tomorrow's another feeling.